समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
What do you do when the lunatics take over the asylum? It's not a rhetorical question, even though it may sound like one, because I think we are in possibly imminent danger of that happening. Last week, the Allahabad High Court admitted a petition about the Taj Mahal. The petition required that the Taj Mahal be subject to an inquiry. People go in there, they check, and they see whether the Taj was actually a Hindu palace or whatever that was taken over. The petition also requested, or required actually, that Muslims be stopped from praying at the Taj Mahal, that Hindus be asked to pray at the temple or whatever it was that is within the Taj Mahal. Now, why do I say the lunatics have taken over the asylum? Well, because none of this is new. The theory is not new. These petitioners have been trying to get their petition admitted since 2015 or many, many years ago. It's been turned down by every court it's been presented to. And ultimately, we thought it might die a natural death, but no, it's gone to the Allahabad High Court. That's issued notices to the central government and to the ASI, asking them to respond as though this were a serious matter. Why do I say it's not a serious matter? Well, because this is not new. This theory has been going around for a long time. It's been laughed out by every serious historian. It's laughed at by every sensible person. And yet, it's now reached the stage where a court is asking for some kind of response. In case you don't believe me, consider this. The people objecting to the petition are the Archaeological Survey of India. And get this, the central government. Neither of these bodies are Muslim appeasers or anti-Hindu or whatever. They're opposing it because they see it for what it is, which is nonsense. But I'll tell you why I'm saying it's nonsense. Because I first came across this theory way, way, way back when I was a schoolboy. I used to be quite fond of conspiracy theories, I concealed in that time, and I came across the works of a man called P.N. Oak, who ran some society, obscure society, for rewriting Indian history. He argued with many, many arguments why the Taj was really a Hindu palace, I think it was, or maybe it was a temple, but basically it was Hindu, was taken over by evil Muslims and transformed into an alleged Muslim monument. I thought it was an interesting argument. I was a child after all. Then I noticed he'd done exactly the same thing with Fatehpur Sikri. According to him, this was also a Hindu city. It was taken over by Muslims who took all the credit for it. And the more I read of his work and his attempts to rewrite Indian history, it was basically one theme. Hindus were wonderful, Muslims were evil. Muslims came in, they took over Hindu monuments, they took over Hindu palaces, they renamed them, they were given credit, and secular historians gave them this credit. Actually, the credit belongs to glorious Hindu civilization. Now, I don't want to make too fine a point on it because in those days I really was into all kinds of conspiracy theories. For instance, I wondered if the continent of Atlantis really existed and there'd been a major cover up. I wondered if the Bermuda Triangle was a way into another dimension. I took very seriously an author who's now been exposed to complete fraud called Erich von Däniken, who said that God was really an astronaut who came from a distant planet and set up humanity as we know it. Now, I'm not any longer a believer in conspiracy theories, so one or two of them I think still hold water. I'm pretty convinced that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't kill JFK on his own, and I think Subhash Chandra Bose may not have died in that plane crash. But beyond that, I think I've learned to distinguish between conspiracy theories and nonsense, and bigoted, hateful nonsense at that, nonsense with a political agenda. Which is not to say that I believe that history is perfect and should not be rewritten. History is based on what we remember, what sources we find, what excavations we do, and that store of knowledge changes over time. So, yes, history needs to be rewritten. We need to keep learning things. I'll give you one example. Mohenjo-daro was discovered in the early part of the 20th century. Until Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were discovered, and we realized that there was a civilization, which we call sometimes the Indus Valley civilization, that predated by thousands of years what we thought we knew about ancient India. We really didn't realize how far back Indian civilization went. So yes, we've rewritten the history books to take into account the Indus Valley civilization, to take into account what happened then. So history must continue to be written. Even in the case of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, we thought the civilization ended there. But they found sites from that civilization in Gujarat, all over India. So obviously it was a much bigger civilization than we realized originally. So I'm not saying don't rewrite that bit. Please rewrite that. Please learn more about history. But even there, unfortunately, it becomes complicated because people with an agenda get involved. Now, one of the problems with the Harappan civilization, which goes by many names, let's stick with this one, is that the script has not yet been deciphered. The seals, which you've probably seen, the famous seals, we don't know what they mean. There are statues like a man who may or may not have been a priest, like a dancing girl. Now, the dancing girl may have been a goddess. She certainly wasn't a dancing girl. We don't know. These are questions that historians debate. But yet, there's a constant stream of argument which says that the civilization was a Hindu civilization. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. We don't know yet. But why is it so important for these people to claim that it was a Hindu civilization? Well, because if it wasn't a Hindu civilization, then Hinduism reached India later, perhaps with people who came from the north of what we now call geographical India, perhaps from immigrants from elsewhere, perhaps from migrants. But we really don't know. It doesn't matter. We'll find out. I mean, how does it matter when something came? For instance, Christianity reached Kerala before it went to Europe. That doesn't mean the Pope isn't the Pope. It doesn't matter when Rome became a Catholic city or whatever. But it matters if you have a particular agenda. If you want to claim that India was always a Hindu country, and that Muslims who were invaders, outsiders, came into India and took us over, then yes, it matters. Because if your argument is that Islam was created elsewhere, that Muslims were invaders, they were outsiders, then somebody is going to turn around and ask you the obvious question. If the people of Harappa were not Hindus, then obviously somebody brought Hinduism to India, right? So what is the difference? Where is all this outsider, invader nonsense coming from? Now, nobody can answer that question. So there's a determined effort to claim that Harappa was a Hindu city, that it was a Hindu civilization, in the absence of any conclusive evidence. You will have realized now that there is a common element to many of these theories. And the common element essentially is anti-Muslim bigotry. I'm prepared to accept, as some people say, that secular historians in the post-independence years wrote a so-called secular history that did down the bad deeds of the Muslims or the good deeds of the Hindus. I mean, that's a subject for debate. But bigotry is not a subject for debate. History is about evidence, about looking at texts, not about imposing your own values. And yet this debate continues. It's reached the Supreme Court. There have been movies made on it. It's gone from being this crackpot scheme that I had seen in school to be something that people debate seriously. You go on social media, you'd be astonished the number of people who will say, yes, there should be an investigation, there should be an inquiry, maybe Hindus actually did build the structure. I actually have no patience now with conspiracy theories. Even when I was growing up and when I saw the moon landing, I was horrified to learn later that there were people who said that the moon landing was fake, that it was staged in a studio in Hollywood. This theory took off after a movie called Capricorn 1, which was dedicated to another moon landing, came out. It goes both ways. I also heard a story about Buzz Aldrin, who, along with Neil Armstrong, was one of the first two people to step on the moon. And the story was that when Aldrin was on the moon, he heard a sound. There should be no sound on the moon, but Aldrin heard it. He came back to Earth, tried to figure out what the sound was, realized it was the Islamic call to prayer, realized that God was all over, and immediately abandoned what he was doing and became an Islamic preacher. Many people in the Gulf have told me the story. I mean, it's not true. And I met Aldrin. He took me through the entire moon adventure. At no stage did he mention hearing any holy things or becoming an Islamic preacher. But that doesn't stop the conspiracy theories from coming. Conspiracy theories will come. History will always be subject to this kind of revisionism. Our job as a sensible society is to keep the lunatic fringe at bay, to keep an open mind, to inquire into what happened, to look at the evidence. But the moment you take the lunatics seriously, the moment you treat their views as worthy of investigation, of being taken seriously in court, you give in. You abandon the foundations of a sensible society. And I think we're in danger of doing that. We're in a danger of allowing people to twist our history and our past only to suit the politics of our present, and therefore blight the knowledge that we pass on in the future. If that isn't lunatics taking over, what is it? That, I think, is a problem with India. And that, I think, is the reason I said what happens when the lunatics take over the asylum. It's not a rhetorical question any longer. It's becoming an Indian reality. And we must hold on with every bit of strength we have to being a society that encourages scientific temper, that encourages knowledge, not a society that gives in to lies and to hatred.